It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
So let's jump into number one, and this is the easiest one, overspending.
Yeah, this is a big one, and I think a lot of people fall prey to this because it's easy. We get caught up in it, and normally this starts around that little special time in November when there's all of these special sales, and we just start losing our minds, right? And we do it under the guise of, I'm going to get a good deal. I'm going to get a good deal. I'm going to get a good deal. And then over the next 30 days, we just start watching money flow out of the coffers.
Well, it's also the part of human nature. I mean, look, we get locked into, we want the nice car and other things because we want to look good to others. Well, gift giving has some of those elements as well. And so you start going through the list. And then it's also a slippery slope. Even in my own house, I mean, my wife calls me because she's stressed out about something. She goes, and I've got this neighbor that I'm like, why are we giving gifts to neighbors? I mean, I don't see where we got into this. We're giving gifts to them. You get a gift. You get a gift. You get a gift. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, but so overspending can be part of that where you wake up one day and you realize, and this is the part we have in the stats that Daniel put together, 36% of Americans are using debt to pay for the holiday. And then on average, and by the way, when I saw this average, I bet if we actually pulled this on, looked at the spectrum of it, there's a lot of people that they wish they were at $1,249. But there are a good portion of Americans are running up debt to pay for their Christmas purchases.
Which is crazy. It's this idea of not only are you spending money, but now you're spending money that you don't necessarily have. You're actually borrowing from your future self in order to buy gifts or things for the present day, which isn't great. But what's interesting is we've seen this new phenomenon where credit cards aren't the only way now to overspend during the holidays. 40% of Americans are now using buy now, pay later services, or at least that was a number that was in 2021. And I feel like this buy now, pay later, and maybe I'm blind to this, Brian, you have to tell me, is a relatively new phenomenon. This isn't something I remember always being there, always being available.
Well, as we talked about in show meeting, I welcomed you to Old Man Land in the fact that you had a memory of something that stumped some of the content team. And that is the term layaway.
Layaway. I remember
so what I think is interesting, this whole buy now, pay later, man, these retailers, you got to give it to them. They're creative.
It's creative.
They are creative. If you're not going into rocket science or investment banking or insurance product sales, you're going into coming up with buy now, pay later. Because back when in the day, old man Bo brought this up, you would go to Kmart.
Yep.
And if you like something, they'd be like, "Woo, so you like that? You'd like to make a purchase there, would you?" Well, I think your loved ones would love that too. I can tell you don't have that money today. So what we're going to do is we'll set this to the side, lay it away, if you will, and then you can come back later when you have money and close out this purchase.
Right. But you had to actually pay for the gift or pay for the thing to be able to take it home and use it and stuff. Well, it seems like society's now changed that.
Yeah, they skipped that step about paying for it.
That's right.
Coming back with the money, and then because basically you would start the shopping process a few weeks to a few months early, and they'd say, "Hey, that's all right. We're going to keep it. It's not going to be gone. We're going to make sure we keep it here nice and safe for you. But you show up and pay." We skipped the pay step, and now you just buy now. It has a ring to it. Pay later. And but the thing is, and Daniel's good enough that he gave us the research on this, is that unfortunately 42% of people who are using buy now, pay later are making late payments. And as soon as you miss those payments on the time you're supposed to, that's when they got you. That's when all the additional fees and other things. And by the way, this is one of those things where I think a lot of young people, Bo, they're very proud of themselves that they don't use credit cards or they don't have credit card debt. But yet these are the same people that are falling into the trap. It's the younger generations that are falling in the trap of this buy now, pay later. Kind of just stay clear if you can.
I want to say, I think it was 60% of millennials and 64% are parents with young children that are starting to use these types of services. And on the surface, it sounds decent, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to, instead of paying all this money now, I'm going to take it and there's no interest. It's not going to accrue. It's not going to be like a credit card. However, what it happens is you fall into this psychological trap where you do start overspending and you begin to believe, you know what, I can buy anything in the world for just a few bucks a month at a time. Daniel was talking to us today. He said he was ordering some groceries and he had to use Instacart or something, and they were letting him do a buy now, pay later over 4 months on groceries. I mean, think about that. You're paying for groceries over the next 4 months that will be rotten and consumed before the end of that that payment date. It's just not something you want to fall into. It's not something you want to fall prey to this holiday season.
So let's talk about how do you avoid this, Bo. The first thing is make sure with your holiday and Christmas season, talk to your loved ones about what expectations are and assume and find out and ensure everyone's on the same page. You in pre-show, we were talking about the movie Four Christmases.
Four Christmases, yep.
And there is a classic scene in there where Vince Vaughn, Reese Witherspoon, they're the fancy dancy yuppie couple who are now visiting their relatives, and they show up and they start the scene, the gift opening scene, and they're like, man, it was tough staying within that $10 price limit. And then you can see Vince and Reese, they kind of look at each other because they bought Xboxes and all these other crazy things for the relatives and the kids. And it just was hilarity ensued because, as you can imagine, and I feel there are so many stars in this movie because when you think about who's the Tim McGraw is the father of one of the kids, and he opens up a flashlight and he's ticked off that it's a flashlight when his brother just got an Xbox from the uncle. So, guys, just make sure you know what the pricing elements, because I'll also save you from running up this debt, running up the consumer purchases that just aren't necessary, and maybe even focus on, hey, if the adults, because a lot of times the adults feel stressed with all this gift giving, how about let's focus on the kids, because it's better to give than to receive, and let's really make sure that this aligns to what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think one of the things that my family does is we have spending limits that we put in place. And we've even moved to doing Secret Santa because now there are so many nieces and nephews and kids that if all you were doing was buying a small gift for every person, you would still spend a lot of money. So understanding what actually works makes a ton of sense. So that helps with like the other parts of the family. But I think a lot of people fall into the trap buying for their own children. You're not worried about necessarily buying for nieces and nephews and that sort of thing. You start overspending just because you want your kids to have that Christmas that you never had. You want them to experience the thing that you never got to experience. Well, one of the things to keep in mind is it's okay if your kids don't get everything on the list. I mean, one of the great things that we're able to teach our kids through the holiday season, and this sounds very Scroogey, I know I'm gonna get made fun of for it, is scarcity, but also deferred gratification. Like maybe, oh, okay, well, we didn't get that right now, but we did get this, and maybe what about, we can think about for your birthday or for your fill in the blank and move it on. I think parents fall in this trap of thinking, I've got to give my child everything that they want this Christmas, or else they're not going to have a pleasant Christmas.
Yeah, that's why I think it's nothing wrong with reminding the North Pole that Santa doesn't have to give the kids everything. Scarcity does create some opportunities. There's a reason that Santa back during the Great Depression was giving out fruit instead of the latest and greatest things. Now, look, they didn't have electronics and Xboxes and everything else, but you get the point. Is that let's be disciplined, let's create some scarcity, but still create happiness, because at the end of the day, the thought that counts. If you want to give the well thought out, the gift that has a lot of love and a lot of the person built into it, those are the most special gifts. Because most of the times the consumption stuff, the knickknacks, the candy, the electronics, the kids won't remember that stuff anyway.
That's what I was going to say. A really easy exercise is if you have older children or if you have siblings, go ask them, hey, what were your favorite Christmas memories? And I think you'd be amazed to hear very rarely is it ever a specific gift. Oh, I remember the Christmas that I got this, or I remember this. It's the time that you spend together. It's the activities that you did. It's the memories that you built. So make sure you focus on that, because a lot of that stuff can be done without spending a ton of money.